Today's Friday, means back on the 180 jetta swap. I still had to modify the AC hose. So you can see right here, this line used to be straight. It's a little hard to see, but there's a little nipple that slides in and locks into the compressor. So I left that up and had to bend it in. So doing that gives me plenty of clearance. I'll just do it here. So now you can see I have basically a finger's gap between the oil cooler. Before, it was putting it straight into it, and with the 2-liter compressor it was way back here. There was no way you'd ever get it. So it's definitely progress. So I put that on, tighten the belt on, so that's all good. Now I just got to put the AC lines in, route them, make sure that there's no kinks, out of the way of fans, moving parts, that type of thing. So as soon as I get done with that, then I can go ahead and put the core support back in. When I put the core support back in, means we're getting to the fun stuff, the intercooler piping. I did cheat a little bit off camera and take a few things out. So I took the standard Mark IV hose for the turbo outlet. I took that off, and then there's a little bracket that goes here on the back. There's a 13 that holds the OEM hose or piping back here. So I took all that off, and I have this coupler. It's a 2-inch down here on the turbo, 2.5 inch up here, and I have a ton of 2.5 inch pipe. And again, keeping everything at a budget, I'm going to use what I have. Plan is for up here, we're going to come off here, around, keep it high. I have to do something with these fuel lines. These are my next big hurdle. You can see they sit way above the engine. I don't know if they're all like this or if it's just the set I got. Definitely an issue. Definitely needs to be solved. You can see it's kicking these lines up. I would really love it if these lines would be down about in this area, and then I could bring a pipe right over, come down, and shoot right into the old intercooler. I'll get on the AC hoses now, get them in, put anti-seize on everything. That way I don't have another issue like I had taking this stuff apart. So I went and got these purple ones. You can see they're thinner, whereas the green ones they send you are a bit thicker. I think that's kind of why they roll out. It's always with a Nissan's compressor that I have these issues, and look at that, they stay right in. You gotta find your compressor bracket bolt. It's this big guy, it's an Allen head. Volkswagens love their Allens and Torxes. Again, get some anti-seize. I see this has kind of a notch cut out of it, so you kind of slide it up into the hose. The best way to do this job is to have this core support off. If you don't have it on, everything's just too tight, because you actually have to, especially since this is a hybrid setup, you have to kind of reach down and around and back up and thread the bolt in, and then you have to tighten it up with one of these guys. This is a stubby ball Allen. Always great to have this type of tool on the on Volkswagen and Audis. So you do the reach around, gets in, then you can kind of screw it in nicely, ensure everything's seated flush. Now you can crank her down. Since the bottom hose, the bigger hose, doesn't have that notch, that means you can rotate it. So you can rotate it. See how right now it's kind of against the fan housing? Well, I could rotate it slightly up to kind of keep it away a little bit more. So that little bit might be the difference of hitting the fan and not hitting the fan. So if I put this over here, it's kicking this on a crazy angle and it's putting it really close to the fan. You see how there's 2 screws here? I think what I'm going to do is just try to see if I can take these out and move this bracket forward, so then that will give me like an extra inch. So as you can see, it still looks pretty factory, but I unscrewed these 2 screws and I just flipped it around so this P-clamp would tighten over here. You can see I have a ton of clearance now. Get the 5mm up here. Now that the AC stuff's all sorted, what I'm going to do is adjust these fuel lines. As I showed you, they're just way too high. I'm gonna try to bend them. That's honestly, it's a huge obstacle. So the sooner I can figure this out, the sooner I can get to the intercooler piping. As soon as intercooler piping's on, take this out, do some rowdy 2-steps, burnouts, and have fun with it like we're supposed to. I got the lines bent out, so now you can see they're well below the valve cover. So how I did it Sure, no one will like it, but some nice channel locks. And what I did, like I put a rag on here, and I would grab it right here, and then I would have a rag on it down here, and I would hold it up here with another pair of pliers. That way, when I'm bending it, I'm holding this straight, but I could bend this down. We're always asking these types of questions. How do you know what's feed and what's return on a fuel rail? A few easy ways to see. First one's markings. So as you can see, put my hand behind it, but there's a little arrow. So that's feed. Volkswagens, they color code their fuel lines as well. They'll put white on the feed. It's not always, but they do always put blue on the return hose. So here's the Mark III. There's the little blue arrow. There's the little blue arrow telling you that it's a return. That's kind of where it wants to sit, but no way that'll work. So I don't want to twist it too much over there, because this is going to be the opening for the arm. Come back when I can find an actual solution. I'm fighting with the upper rad hose because of the how the intake sits. So what I'm trying to do is make things as serviceable as possible. The upper hose that I'm using is actually going to be Mark IV hose, but backwards, if that makes any sense. This part would usually go up here, but I'm going to flip it to sit right here. And then this side is angled this way and it's coming out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld a piece of aluminum like that. And then I'll weld the nipple to fit that, and I'll just cut this hose right here. So then if I ever have an issue with this hose, this piece will be strong, but if the hose ever becomes an issue, I can just get another Mark IV 180 upper rad hose and all is well. I got one of those really cheap 1.8T cast flanges, and it's garbage, but I can use it for the ends because that's aluminum. So I cut the bottom nipple off here, I cut this side nipple off, and I cut the small nipple off. This is a jack handle off of a Harbor Freight jack right here. You can see the other end of it. This is what usually goes down into the jack. It's a pretty solid piece of aluminum, so cut it off there. Gonna start welding the nipples on it. So to weld it, I'm going to be using about 115, 20 amps. You can see I've already flash tacked it, that way it'll hold together. And then I just gotta add the filler now. Got it welded, very hot. Take it to the toilet. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. Ooh. Flip it again. Ooh. Very hot. Usually works a lot better when don't have a camera in your hand. So I'm gonna blow dry that real quick. Here's how the new pipe's gonna look. It's gonna go over there again. These are both Mark IV upper rad hoses. This one's just cut down a bit. So that little bung will go right there. That should give me plenty of clearance for the fan plug. And the intake pipe, I have plenty of room to go down there. And then the last thing I'll have to do is just put the little nipple that goes from here up to the coolant bottle to bleed. Got the this bung welded on for the lower oil cooler hose. So to make it a lot easier on yourself, see, I did not drill it out first. You weld it to this, and then look, you have this nice guide. Look at that. Find the drill bit that fits, and just drill it. Can't get much easier than that. Hole's nice and clean. I just have to clean up the little bits inside. Here you can see all the weld on the inside from welding this part. That means I got full penetration. That way I know it's a good weld. I'll have no issues with this. I can grind out the inside just to make sure that I have optimal flow. Next, I'm going to add in the small return nipple that goes to the coolant bottle. Pipe's all made now. Kind of looks like a VR crack pipe, honestly. Cleaned out the inside, bored out all the holes. And now what I'm going to do is tape off the flanged areas where the hoses sit, and then I'm just going to paint it black. That way I mean, this big silver thing's kind of out of place in the engine bay. Just gonna spray it. Doing this the 180 swap into a Mark III, I always knew that putting the coolant hoses would be kind of a little challenge. Modified many things. I've thought about other parts that are interchangeable, but one thing I was always curious about, which seems to work right now, if you look at this is a standard Mark IV 180 coolant flange, and you see it only has one port right here, and this other port goes off to the metal crossover pipe that goes all the way to the water pump. Well, a new beetle 180, certain models have two of these ports. So they have this port, then they'll have another port out here coming down, and this is a little bit longer. So in my head I thought, hey, that's a good idea, because on the Mark IV the reservoir is actually over on the passenger side of the car, and then on a Mark III the coolant reservoir is on the driver's side. So I figured, why not try the new Beetle one that has those two flanges coming down, or two ports coming down, and then I could just put the coolant bottle right to it. And here you go. Here's the Mark III coolant bottle, and it just goes right down, and this is gonna be a little bit hard for you guys to see, but look at that. Fits perfect, exactly as I imagined it. Doing swaps, if you guys are attempting this, it's easy to use OEM stuff. I've only had to modify a few things. I've had to make the fitting over there that you guys saw, and then over here on the passenger side, where in a Mark IV the coolant bottle would be right here. So there's a hose that comes off and goes right down to this junction right here. But you can see it's usually called the Y piece, and that's a big common leak. So that's why they sell these aluminum pieces. I cut off the Y and just made this a single piece. I mean, you could have done it with a piece of plastic, but I had this and I used it. I don't think I'll have any coolant issues at all on this car. I'm just gonna vacuum fill it. If there's a couple leaks here and there, be able to address it with clamps or whatever, see if I left something loose. But I'm confident that this is going to be a functional setup and I won't have any issues. Out of a Harbor Freight jack handle and a very, very poorly made cast 180 coolant flange, you can make your own coolant flange for a Mark III. It's another big step. The cooling system is complete, basically, but I still got to pressure test it. You come in here, and now this is your cooling system pressure tester. Basically, you attach this to the coolant bottle and pump it up. Listen for hisses, spray some water on it, but you need a certain adapter. Mark IIIs have their own adapter. It's just how it goes. This is the Mark III adapter. There's the part number. It is TAB 10031. I mean, this is a Blue Point one, which is just like the little lesser brand of Snap-on. Pump it up. Already hear a leak somewhere. Already hear a leak. Has a little bit of pressure in it, but if you spray soapy water in there, see the bubbles coming out? So that means this clamp is not good enough. So unfortunately I'll have to use a clamp, but we have the good clamps. They're called ABA clamps. But you can see these ones don't have the holes like how normal worm gear clamps are. So this shouldn't shred the hose. It should be perfectly fine. This is actually what they use on BMWs. BMWs use these for a very long time. That'll go there, and then re-pressure test. None of the original hose clamps would hold pressure, so got an ABA clamp there, and there. That's expensive on its own. That's probably $15 in clamps, maybe more than that. Pumped it up to about 12-ish, and it's holding just fine. So coolant system done.